Good evening all and welcome. The night shift can be a pretty creepy time to work, and we're about to find out why. Don't forget to download our app for even more scary stories with no ads. Links in the description. But for now, it's time to get comfortable. Grab your flashlights and let the darkness take control. I was cleaning a bar in the middle of the night. This is an old building over 100 years old, and over 90 when I worked there. The building was a restaurant/bar, and then became a cafe/speakeasy during Prohibition, and there are remnants of tunnels in the basement from bootlegging. As I was cleaning in the middle of the night, and being the only one there, I came around a corner to two men playing pool in the pool room, on the other side of the hallway. I knew they weren't really there, but they were there even after I squeezed my eyes shut. They were both in old western wear, jeans, hats, one blue, one red plaid. Their movements were fluid, smooth and floaty, almost slow, but not as how they played on the empty table. I wasn't scared, I didn't feel cold or threatened, more curious and disbelief. "Hello, can I help you?" I said as loudly as I could, and started walking quickly towards them, almost at a charge. The one in plaid looked right at me as soon as I crossed the threshold into the room, and they vanished. An acquaintance of mine was guarding a warehouse on a military base in the middle of an empty field. He told me he always had some candy in his pocket for easy access, in case he saw the ghost of a child. Said kid trespassed and was shot in the 1970s or so, and since then all the night watchmen who heard a kid laugh or cry toss candy at their backs, so they can't see the source of the sound. The story about the ghost boy was in the middle of the last military dictatorship of 1976 to 1981 in Argentina. It was not strange to hear about people disappearing, including 500 kids 15 or younger. That's why lots of people think the kid was not trespassing but escaping the military base, and his ghost is still there to torment the people who kidnapped and tortured him. Another was a police officer working the night shift in the building. A few years ago, a fire destroyed the building, therefore killing the officer working there. He told me it was not a rare occurrence to hear heavy footsteps, as in someone with police footwear going upstairs to him, but he never saw anything. But since both were colleagues, he wasn't worried at all. This next story happened a few streets away from my parents' house almost 10 years ago. It was all over the news, even national news. A bus driver was at the end of his shift and stopped very close to a cemetery. Only him and an acquaintance were on the bus and the lights were off since it was not taking any more passengers at the time. And both saw a woman in the middle aisle of the bus, young, blonde and in very bad shape and reeking. She had a bag in her hand and went to the driver to show its contents, and it was a severed human head. The ghost asked the driver to not break eye contact, if this was the end of the route, since she had to ride another bus. Both men saw, listened and smelt her. Even when she vanished, both were in shock and unable to do anything for a while. Then the driver called his colleague for help, and when they arrived, both the driver and the passenger were in no condition to be left alone. A mechanic had to drive the bus, but had to stop before arriving at the company's garage. The constant ringing of the bell, the one to tell the driver that the next stop is yours, drove him crazy. The GPS stopped working, and the doors opened and closed completely by themselves. It was a very eventful night. I worked at Best Buy, stocking shelves a few years ago during the holidays. Only 2 of us in the whole place. No biggie, I'm listening to podcasts and music every night. As I'm stocking the shelves, I see the most clear possible movement from the corner of my eye that's possible. I would have easily staked $1 million, had I had them, that a camera would have just caught someone jogging by. I'm creeped out because the other guy is in the back, and as I turn to check that he is, I catch the movement again on the other side of me. And when I say I sprinted to the back, I mean I moved like Usain Bolt towards a gold medal. We checked videos and of course there was nothing. But that was the night I knew ghosts were real. I worked as a janitor for a company. We had a contract to clean all the buildings this reality company owned. so they wanted this old-ass building carpet cleaned. It was in a decent area and old-school part of town. Well, I pulled up and unloaded all my stuff from the van into the doorway. As soon as I got there, I had a really bad feeling, almost like bubble guts. Well, none of the lights are on except the light that they have to keep the place dim, like little lamps and stuff. So I'm walking to the back and turn on all the lights, and the switches are right across from the bathrooms. As soon as I turn the lights on, I turn around to see the woman's bathroom door is cracked, and then it slams shut. I froze for a good 5 minutes, trying not to crap myself, and debated on opening the door to see what was up. Till this day, I still don't know what it was. I just packed up my stuff and got out of there. They never asked about it either, because obviously it didn't get cleaned. I work the night shift at a live-in drug rehab. We have kids newborn to 6 years. I was shampooing one of our daycare members and had the door propped open with a heavy metal chair. One of our children, an adorable little blonde girl in a white dress-styled nightgown, had come out of her room and was under the chair. It was around 3 a.m., and I yelled at her to get her little pup back to bed. She giggled and ran down the hall. I turned off the machine and followed her but didn't see her. I went into her and her mum's room to make sure she'd gotten to bed. She was in fact already in bed, fast asleep, in matching shirt and pajama pants. There's no way she could have got changed that quickly. I work the overnight shift at my local hardware store. Let's call it Gnome Depot for anonymity's sake. Every so often in certain areas, there will be some weird things that happen, such as boxes falling off perfectly flat carpets, products that will fall off their hooks, disembodied footsteps, some faint voices, and an uncomfortable feeling of being watched. Also, there's sometimes a faint smell of perfume coming from that area, while some of it could very well be other associates in the store. We have about 6 to 10 associates in the store all night. We all usually keep to our own departments and don't go wandering off. The area in question is also kind of out of the way of any area most associates would go to, such as the break room / time clock, etc. So we don't usually go there unless we have to. I work in a library, and on weekdays we have to go through the building and turn off all the lights. I always hated this. I'm super jumpy, but I always somehow got scheduled only closing shift. One night just after midnight, because we have to wait until it's officially closed, I was going about this routine, and we have study rooms that people can rent out. I knew they were empty because all the keys were checked back in, but out of the corner of my eye I saw movement in one. These lights are motion activated, so that's what caught my attention. I reluctantly go look and there's nothing in there. I continue about my task, and lights in the other study rooms keep turning on. It's absolutely freaky, and I never got an answer onto what happened next, except my boss told me that he's gotten reports of weird stuff happening in there. So in my opinion, the place is definitely haunted. I work in high-end security. I was protecting a client's residence and was alone on the property in the guard shack. The guard shack is a small building close to but detached from the main mansion. It was around 1 a.m. and the building was locked tight and armed. I received a phone call from the house line coming from the staff room. I answered the phone and there was nothing but silence. I immediately went to the area and found the room empty. I swept the area and that floor of the house but found nothing. I went back to the shack. 5 minutes later, I get another call on the phone from the house, this time from the spooky basement. Nothing on the other line, just silence. I loaded a round in my gun and went into the basement. I checked every corner and then every inch of the house and found nothing at all. It never happened again after that. That house creeped me out, and most of the other security agents also had spooky happenings there. I worked about 3 months full-time at McDonald's night shift. The first week, some cooked-up man looked at my name tag and said, "Hey, Mary, I'll wait until these doors open and cut you up into pieces." So I removed my name tag after that. The second week, someone grabbed my tie and tried to punch me, but I had the reflexes to close the drive-through on his hand first, and removed my tie after. The third week, I got my first drunk driver. The guy had an open 40-ounce bottle of vodka between his lap, and I called the police so that they could pick him up. Happened once a week after that, in general. There's a lot more, but working nights is just awful. People are horrible when it's dark outside. More horrible than usual, anyway. I worked overnights at Walmart. The parking lots were always empty, beside the random once-in-a-while dudes who would park up and sleep. One night I was chilling in my car on my lunch break when I noticed some headlights turn on behind me. They stayed on for a bit, then eventually turned off, but when I looked up I noticed there was no car, not even pulling out or anything. I was terrified to go back inside, thinking I was just going to get swooped up and kidnapped, so I sat there for the rest of my break, looking in all directions to make sure I wasn't going crazy, but I never saw the car, only the lights. I still think about it randomly, and my boyfriend tries to write it off as maybe it was street lights far in the distance making it look like it was bright behind you. But no, it was like 10 feet behind me, as if someone had pulled up a light, then poof, just gone. I wish I could explain it. I was a lone worker in a building doing IT support, and I hear the buzzer go off at around 2 a.m. So I walk over to the door and I'm about to press the release to open it and ask what the person wants. It was a large business park, so maybe he was looking for a certain building, but as I reached for the buzzer he grabbed the door very quickly, which made me realize what I was about to do. I asked him who he was and he just said, "John." I asked what he wanted and he said he left some files inside. I asked where he left them and I would get them. He said I wouldn't know where they were and he should just grab them. Basically told him to leave after that. I was on edge for the rest of my shift. What the hell did this guy want? Why was he here trying to get in here at 2 a.m? So many questions and no answers. This happened to me about 3 months ago. I work at a Hy-Vee and as a night shift stocker, and it's 2 hours after we close. I'm in the frozen section away from my co-workers, who are in the grocery aisle, and out of nowhere, some guy taps me on the shoulder and says, I fell asleep in the restroom, can you let me out the store? We eventually let him out, but I swear the moment he tapped me on the shoulder and I turned to face him, I almost instinctively tried to run. I think you would have too, if it had happened to you. I used to work in a night shift call center. There were only a few other employees on night shift, and the comfort rooms were empty most of the time. So, I was using the toilet, and I knew I was the only one there since I could see all of the other cubicles were empty. I just stepped out of the toilet and into the hallway when I heard footsteps running in my direction from inside the comfort room. I glanced back, but no one was there. From then on, I would always ask one of my co-workers to accompany me there. I was too afraid to go alone. One night I was working very late in the office with one of my co-workers. We were finishing up filing and talking before heading out. Together we went to the lobby, locking up the door, turning everything off, and went back to the mailroom to get the last few things out. While we were talking, we heard heels walking around out the lobby. It sounded like they were just walking around in circles. No one really wears heels at our office either. Thinking it was a director staying late, we quietened down and waited for them to walk by. Hello? Susan? But there was nothing. We just locked those doors, and there was no other way for them to go other than to pass us on the way out. We went to look in the lobby, and no one was there. But we both heard it as clear as day. Working late in that building always meant hearing noises and things, but that was the first time we heard something pretty undeniably strange. I worked night shift at a memory care facility that was apparently haunted, but it was actually one of the residents that scared me the most. The haunted aspect just added to the creepy tone of the place. We would have to do rounds to check on the residents, which was fine except for someone called Helena. She was at the point in her dementia where she was considered non-verbal. I never actually saw her in the light of day, but every time I opened the door to her room, she was sitting straight up in bed, with her long, black hair completely covering her face like in The Ring. If that wasn't creepy enough, the second she realized you opened her door, she would scream a bloody murder scream until you left. And in the dark, I would have to approach this person and check her briefly to make sure she was dry and clean. And being physically attacked by someone with a memory illness is not uncommon. I quit after about a month, for many reasons, but that was certainly one of the contributing factors. I'm a retail worker. My shift started at 6 a.m., which was when we usually unloaded boxes from the trucks that we received that morning, or from the previous night. My job was to open up boxes and place/organize their contents into cages that are meant to be taken and worked out on the sales floor by other employees. On this particular day, we had already received our truck the night before, so all I had to do was unpack the boxes. So here I am, 6 a.m. in the morning, all by my absolute self in the back of the store. I had just emptied out a box of stuffed elephant toys that play a lullaby tune when you wind them up. I placed them on the cage and moved them back to the next box, when all of a sudden one of the elephant toys falls to the ground behind me. I didn't think much of it at first. I just turned around and placed it back to where I had originally put it. I carried on emptying out all the contents of the box I'm working on. And just like that, I finished another 2 boxes as well. Again, just to reiterate, this was 6 a.m. in the morning, with not a single soul around. It was still and quiet in my area. As I'm about to start unpacking my 3rd box, I hear something that makes the hairs on my arms stand on end. The elephant lullaby starts to play on its own. And it's not just any lullaby, because that would be too normal. It's a slow, distorted, creepy lullaby sound. I knew instantly that it was the elephant toy, but I couldn't understand how it could play the lullaby on its own when nobody had wound it up, much less why it sounded so creepy. I then hear the toy fall from where I had put it again. I tell you, I have never felt more like a movie character in my entire life. I go to pick up the toy, and as I'm putting it back, I check to see if the other ones make the same sound. Why would anyone want to buy their child a creepy little elephant? But to my horror, the other elephants, when wound up, make a normal lullaby sound. I first thought that the battery was dead. Even so, nobody wound up that toy, so I had no reason to start playing the lullaby on its own. To this day, I can't look at those little stuffed elephants' toys the same. Maybe there's some kind of logical explanation to it, but it does not make it any less creepy in the moment. I worked at McDonald's for 2 years and worked night shift for a few weeks while they were figuring things out, finding a manager. The dude gets up to the window to pay for his food, and he has a Bud Light can in his cup holder. He pays for his food, and I go to hand him his change and he grabs my hand and won't let go. I stare at him and he just won't let go. While I'm trying to pull it back without being too rude because maybe he's just mentally disabled or something, but he tries to pull it to his mouth. And that's when I put my lower body against the inside wall for leverage and pull my arm all the way back in. The dude hasn't said a word. I had to make the lion cook hand him his food because there was no way I was dealing with someone as disgusting as that. I worked as a nighttime guard in an old court, which shared a back wall with an equally old arrest building. The guard room where we spent time between patrols shared a wall with the execution chamber, which is no longer in use, but one that was active within my lifetime. So yeah, old, creaky building and room with such a morbid history combined create quite a mood. Now, I generally don't believe in the supernatural, but the fear is there when you have to walk around a dark, empty building like that. One night I was patrolling as usual, looking around and was a good halfway into my typical patrol route, when I noticed something in a corner of my eye. Nothing obvious, just a small shape moving behind me. I've immediately turned around, but the thing ran to a nearby corridor, not making a sound and still staying out of my direct line of sight. So I'm there frozen. I stopped in a half turn, not moving a muscle and panicking. Seconds passed, and I'm weighing my options between doing my job and looking like an idiot calling someone. Finally, I move towards the corridor, trying to move silently. I look inside, shine my flashlight, and there's nothing there, which was almost worse than if there had been something there, since the corridors are interconnected, so whatever it was could have escaped to anywhere in the building. I look around and find nothing, and eventually decide to finish my patrol. I turn around, and it's on the other side. It's the same thing. I turn my head, and it scampers into the corridor I came from. Shocked, I moved my neck again, and weirdly, I see the same movement again. Turns out it was a stain in the corner of my glasses the entire time. I'm currently working night shift as a security guard at a factory, and one night I was chilling doing nothing like normal, and at 4 a.m. a bus which can only be described as a clown bus comes driving up to the guard shack through the thick-ass fog that was out that night, and I was convinced I was going to die. Turns out it was a blood drive, and the blood bus were just setting up early for their blood drive that was going to happen that day. But I swear, I'll never feel the same again about blood drives. I was working at a random shop as a part-time worker during the night shift, mainly cleaning because there weren't that many customers at night. All the guys at the store would always, day or night, go outside instead of going to the men's toilet, and I never knew why. There was a sign on the men's bathroom that said, "Keep out," spelled with a C. I thought it was a typo. One of the workers who worked 1 hour of night shift told me that it was supposed to say "creep out," and it was hung by a customer. I wonder why, so when he left the store I went to the bathroom. It smelled like someone had died in there, literally. There was a fresh cheeseburger on the floor and a 2-day-old drink. I was confused, but I heard someone enter the store, so I sold them what they needed and went back. The door was closed even though I left it open. I went in and the cheeseburger had 2 bites in it, and the drink was spilled everywhere. There was no one in the stores or anything. I left the place and left a sign on the door for the morning shift, and I wrote this: "I closed early because I was afraid. There's something in the men's bathroom. Bring it a new drink if you don't believe me." I worked the morning shift after that and told them everything. We put up cameras and did everything we could, but there was no sign of anyone. They believed me, but we didn't know what was happening. I told the owner of the shop, and she said this: "Josh, darling, we haven't had the men's bathroom for 12 years now. That's why everyone goes outside. The place for the men's bathroom is a place for leftover food. Are you okay?" I was confused, and me and the morning shift guy went to check. The owner was correct, but who ate the burger if there's no other entrance to the place for leftovers than the usually locked door? I stopped working there, but was kept informed of the situation. The rest of the information was handed to me from Ben. He said that there was someone or something in the vents of the so-called men's bathroom, but he never did tell me if there was anything after that. I went to the place way later, and it was in ruins. Only 2 dogs, dead, crushed by the bricks. I never heard from anyone else there again. I used to volunteer at a religious retreat that was centuries old, and since I lived some distance away, I was given accommodation. I worked the evening shift in the on-site cafe bar and got back to my room shortly after midnight. I opened the door to my room, and just as the light came on, I saw a shadow shaped like a cat walk through my ankles and vanish. I had many experiences like this that could only be explained as the paranormal, but this one stuck with me, and obviously I never found any cat. I worked in a group home for kids under the age of 5. It was Christmas Day, and I worked the night shift. There was only one toddler in the house overnights, as the rest of the kids went home to visit with their parents. I was the one staff on shift, as that's all that was needed for an overnight with one child in the home. The home had lots of ghost stories associated with it. I had experienced a few creepy incidences, but this one became my most memorable and most shared ghost story of the house. I arrived on night shift before midnight, completed shift change with the other staff, and they went home. I did my cleaning and food prep and decided to put on a movie. I did a bed check when I first got there, and in the middle of gathering the laundry from the rooms upstairs, where I saw the one toddler sleeping away in his crib. While I was watching the movie, I heard a loud bang from upstairs. My worst fear was that the toddler somehow got out of his crib and fell. I was getting up to check on him, and I heard something running across the floor above me, loud enough that it sounded like a small child, or so I thought. Oh no, he's out of his crib and he's going to hurt himself running around in the dark. So I ran up the stairs 2 at a time and busted into his room, only to find him sleeping soundly in his crib. I was terrified and put on a pot of black coffee and jittered the whole night away until the kiddo woke up at 6 a.m. The rest of the bed checks that night were very quick, and I made sure all lights were turned on at all times where necessary. I hated working the night shift at the grocery store. I honestly never thought of exploring the store at night. I just stick to the milks and freezer. But one day I had to walk over to the damn meat section to get something with half the lights off. I just remembered the one time, I swear to God, a dude just kept chopping up meat in the dark until I came over to turn the light on. I swear I friggin' ran, knocked stuff over and told my team I was going for a smoke break. That thing/person for some reason followed me and stood outside smoking. Didn't say a thing, and I just ran home that night and called it in. Apparently there was a light in the back that was shining enough for him to work. I didn't buy it though. I got fired. It was better that way. I worked evenings as a closing manager at a store that closed at 9. A dude pulled up at about 4:30 p.m. and sat there for half hour, and then from 5 until 9 would go out and dig in his red toolbox for a while, and then go back and sit in the truck in pattern. I joked that he was going to rob us, but as the night went on his pattern never changed, so at 9 he still hadn't left and was messing around in his toolbox. I called the police, and I thought he must have been waiting for us to leave with a night deposit. So the police rolls up and he's driving out and almost flips his truck over by driving sideways off the hill and goes to the gas station. They arrest him for felony possessions, felony impersonation, and 4 and 3 drug possessions, etc. Pretty creepy. I seriously wonder what his intentions were with us in the store. I worked in an airspace museum in my late teens and early 20s. Huge echoey building full of wartime planes and spacecrafts and tons of history. It was a pretty cool place. I heard a ton of spooky stuff, whether you were alone or in a group. I was closing up one night after a catering ordeal, and while I was mopping I felt something behind me and I heard a "Pardon me?" in a man's voice. I stepped to the side, and when no one passed me I turned around to see if he actually just needed something, but there was no one there. Later that same night I went to clock out, and as I passed under a balcony, I was hit with one of those big, black binder clips that you use to hold a stack of documents together. I look up, totally dark. Understandable, it was close to 2 in the morning. I continued walking and got hit with another binder clip. I sped walked away and heard a third clip hit the ground behind me. When I got out, the auto alarm set, meaning I was the last worker in the building, and I got out of there real quick. Never told anyone, though I'm sure they would have all believed me. That place is known for paranormal activity, especially now. I worked night shifts for 3 different jobs, but my most eventful was at the hotel. To start off, it was definitely haunted, and I had 3 big separate incidents that happened to me involving the paranormal, which I'm going to get into now. So, the first one was only a week into the job. This was a small 2-story hotel with hallways inside. I decided to do a round just to make sure things were okay and check things out. Things were quiet as it was around 2 a.m. I reached the upstairs hallway and just strolled quietly along when I heard faint footsteps behind me. I turned, saw no one, and continued on my way. I kept hearing footsteps as I would walk, so I just started glancing over my shoulder but kept moving. I didn't see a soul, so I started speed walking. This is when the footsteps started turning into shuffling sounds, like someone was dragging their feet on the carpet at a fast rate. I didn't turn around that time but started jogging. The shuffling got louder, closer and quicker. At this point I was terrified, and I reached the downstairs lobby at a full run. That's when I heard a loud and rapid breathing/snorting directly in my ear, along with the feeling of hot breath on my ear, like someone was out of breath, but exaggerating their gasps. I ran behind the front desk and ducked down in a crouch, covering my ears, and had my eyes squeezed shut. It felt like someone was standing directly over me. Then I could feel my hair being lightly brushed, like a light breeze went through it. I was sobbing. I stayed like that for a good 10 minutes, too scared to open my eyes. When I finally did get up from the floor, I went to the back room for the rest of the night until the manager came that morning. Risking being thought as a complete whack job, I explained what happened. That's when she told me that the guy before me quit because he almost had the exact same experience. In the 5 years I worked there, I never went to the upstairs hallway at night again. I would also often see dark shadows down the downstairs hallway, moving along the walls and going around the corner. Once when I saw the shadow, it started moving away from me and turned back toward me, and I ran back for the night. The last incident I had was when I saw a guy, clear as day, standing in the pool area after hours on the security camera. The doors were supposed to be locked, so I got annoyed thinking a guest had ignored the pool hours and managed to get into the area. I had already cleaned up the area and restocked the towels, so I marched out there to kick this guy out. I went through the door, and the area was dark, no ripples in the water, nobody in the sauna. The one bathroom door was wide open and empty. There was no one there. I came through the only door in the area and nobody passed me on my way out. So I noped out of there and hid in the back room for the rest of the night. This was a town that boasted to be the most haunted town in the state, so, you know. And just as a side note, I don't have any drugs or mental illnesses. These are not just ghost stories. They really happened to me, and each incident scared the crap out of me. The place is called Atchison, Kansas. It's located along the Missouri River. Atchison was a famous aviator, and Amelia Earhart's birthplace and host of an annual Amelia Earhart Festival during July. Along with being one of the most historical cities in Kansas, it's also noted, as I said, as the state's most haunted town, drawing paranormal enthusiasts from all around. I lasted at this hotel for about 5 years. There was also one incident where I had to have a K-9 unit guard the lobby because a woman escaped her abusive husband and he was out looking for her with a gun. He had a shootout with the police and was on the run, and they put her up in the hotel for safety. So as you can imagine, that was very fun. A co-worker of mine on my shift, in a post a mile over, heard humming in the dead of night. She got scared and went to turn on the overhead lights just to come back and find everything tipped over. She abandoned her post, came to mine, and I told her a story about a demon that likes to drag people to hell and turn their skin into sentient clothing for other demons. Story came out of my arse, but I made it sound like a local legend. Said it wanted her for her pretty tattoos. She casually brushed it aside, but didn't return to the post again that night, because she was scared. I work the night shift in a hotel. One night, just as I was minding my own business, I hear a noise coming from the restaurant. My ears prick up, and I wonder what it could be. The sound was loud, and as it continued, I heard the sound of plates breaking. That was seriously creepy. So I get the security guard and we go and check it out. When we arrive, we're astounded. There's not a thing out of place. We both stand there flabbergasted how we both had heard what we had, and yet there was no evidence. The breakfast guy also said he once saw a man in the kitchen at 5 a.m. And as he went to say something to him, he walked straight through the wall. Safe to say the hotel was haunted as hell. On many nights, the smell of food cooking came from the restaurant. I mean big cooking. I don't know what the invisible people were cooking, but it smelled great. Many times I felt like I was living the movie The Shining. There was also one security guard that reported a young man had disappeared on encounter in the parking lot, and another lady reported 2 young phantom men in the same parking lot on another occasion. You can say it was creepy to work there. It's been 8 months since I started working at the night shift in a hotel. No one told me anything until I started asking because of weird experiences. My shift begins at 10 p.m. and ends at 8 a.m. I honestly love it because it gives me time to dedicate to my hobby since I only need to answer the phone and give out keys. It was rather sooner than later that I started to notice weird things. For example, it's really common to see the lights of the hallway on the 2nd floor turning on and off during the night. Sometimes some doors will get open or closed without anyone near them. At the end of the hallway of the 1st floor, sometimes you can see a shadow person at the end, and you can also hear someone say your name in a really low tone or hear people talking at all hours of the night. I'm the only worker in at night, and most people that come here come for work, so they get to bed really early. The most extreme experience was a day when a girl from the morning shift got here, and we were talking on the kitchen about that day's schedule. Without any warning, every cooking pot and cutting board, dozens of them in different sizes, just flew around the kitchen. Most of my co-workers say that they would not work here at night because they're scared of ghosts. But honestly, I'm so used to these things that I just go and clean the mess made during the night. I've had a lot of other experiences in other places as well, dealing with the paranormal. I was working night shift in a hospital that had been operating since the 1800s. It's a large manor house and is a specialist hospital for patients with brain injuries, spinal injuries and physical disabilities. It's a rather large building but has less than 30 patients at the moment due to COVID, so the entire ground floor is empty. During night shift, the nursing staff are allowed to go into one of the hospital bedrooms downstairs on break to rest, and that is what I did yesterday evening. It was around 1:30 and no one else was on the ground floor when I heard 3 knocks on the door in a row. I did immediately feel uneasy. The older staff tell stories about the house. It was exorcised or something 20 years ago, apparently due to strange things happening during the renovation of the hospital, and was said to be unhappy spirits of a matron who had not passed on, but the paranormal activity stopped as soon as the hospital was blessed. Generally, the house is not known for a lot of spiritual activity, maybe the odd door slamming and figures seen reported. I'm used to hearing ghost scary stories while at work in the hospital, but have never experienced anything myself. I went to investigate at the door, but nothing was there when I sat down. It happened again, 3 knocks in a row, and then I said to myself, if it happens again, I'm going to go back upstairs to the ward where I was working on. It did, and I got the most awful feeling of dread and returned upstairs. The other nurse just laughed, but it did freak me out. I googled 3 knocks in a row and was terrified, because apparently it's the 3 knocks of death. I wondered if anyone here knew something about it that I should know. I was a night shift CNA at a newly developed nursing home. I had worked at other nursing homes before and expected a few paranormal activities, but with this being a new building, I thought we would be good. However, this building had been built on top of the soil from an old nursing home that had been around for decades and demolished to make way for this new facility. Everything was fine at first. For a few months we had a few residents, but as the numbers increased and different halls started to fill, things began getting spooky at night. I've always been somewhat of a magnet for spiritual things, and also my shift partner was a paranormal investigator in her spare time, so needless to say I should have expected this. Anyway, we encountered the usual little things like hearing doors slam in vacant rooms or chairs moving at the nurse's station in the middle of the night. I could handle that stuff, but our experiences started getting too close for my taste. One night I was at the nurse's desk alone at around 3 a.m. when a female voice screamed, "Help me!" right behind my ear. I jumped and turned, expecting to see a resident behind me, but there was no one there. An hour later, a resident down the hall, directly behind me, paged me and said there was a woman screaming for help in her room and wanted to make sure I found her. Residents' pagers would also go on and off, and we would check the room only to find that they were asleep. One time, a poor resident started freaking out and said, "Get me the hell out of this room, someone was shaking my bed." All of these things happened at night, and the day shift CNAs simply don't believe us. I work night shift in a food factory, and I used to take a break at exactly 3 a.m. and have a quick smoke, as it was my routine, and after that I decided to take a leak before heading back to work. Unfortunately, I was the only unlucky guy who decided to take a break that night, and I'm the only person in the CR. Being said, I'm in the middle of my thing, and I heard this giggle right behind me, like children playing and running around. What the hell was that? There was no one there. There shouldn't be a child here anyway, since this is a factory. I don't have the guts to check every single cubicle if someone's fooling around with me. And hell, that voice sends chills down my spine, and it was my only experience with ghosts, but it gave me adrenaline, like I want to see a ghost next time, even though it almost gave me a heart attack, and I nearly pissed my pants. This happened to me when I was working the night shift at a nursing home. I was a registered nurse, now disabled. It was just me and a CNA, and we were the only staff in the Alzheimer's unit. She had the TV on some stupid show about hauntings in America, and then looks up at me and says, "You'd think nursing homes would be haunted a lot because many people die here." I gave her a look and told her to shut up. The place is creepy enough at night as it is. We go do rounds on a resident who was in the process of passing. She was on hospice, and her family was aware. I checked on her every 15 minutes because I didn't want her to be in pain, and see if she was in any distress. At this time, she wasn't in distress, but it was obvious she wasn't going to last much longer. Her family lived across the country and had requested not to be called past 9 p.m., so I stayed with her and held her hand and read from the Bible, as she was a devout Catholic. After all the aftercare was finished, the CNA and I had to be in the room for 15 minutes. I left to call the funeral home and all of that. I barely dialed the phone number when the CNA came running down the hallway and said, "She's breathing again. I don't know what to do." She was obviously freaked out, and her face was pale. I went to the resident's room and she was definitely breathing now. I checked vital signs and thought everything was much lower than normal levels, but they were there. I checked them several times after she'd passed, and there had been no blood pressure and no pulse, no anything. She lived for another 5 years and claimed that she'd met God. This is the creepiest thing to ever happen to me. Hey guys, it's Mort here. Thank you so very much for listening. I do hope that you enjoyed tonight's collection of stories. If of course you did, you can let us know by writing it in the comments or just, putting a high five emoji or something. That'd be pretty cool. It's a real shame that so few of you actually watched the airplane video. I thought it was really good, If you want something to watch, I would hope you'd give it a chance. It was a really good video. But yes, other than that, I hope that everyone is good. Thank you as always to my members and patrons for their continued love and support of this channel by giving me a small amount of money every month. It really does mean a hell of a lot. For now, guys, I think I am going to sign off though, and hopefully you catch up on that airplane video or just watch something else by me. Both are fine. For now though, stay awesome. The airplane video is right there. And I'll see you in the next one.